Hello, today is July 14th, 2014. Today I'm going to talk about the science of wisdom. I find science to be very interesting and fascinating. I love science fiction, and I love reading about science. But honestly, I have respect for science, but at the same time, I understand its simplistic viewpoint as it measures and views things from its physical, three-dimensional point of view. There's a hypothesis, theories, and folks, those are just guesses. Sometimes intelligent guesses, sometimes guesses that are totally wrong. And then, of course, they set up an experiment in a controlled environment, for the most part. But is there really a controlled environment? I say it doesn't exist. You've heard of scientists being bewildered because an experiment in controlled environments have different outcomes depending upon the observer, who's observing it, and possibly even the mood of the observer. Are they emanating love? Are they carrying anger? Unfortunately, scientists didn't quickly say or understand that it's consciousness. We are God. We are of that one source consciousness. So when anybody is watching what they call an experiment, that one source consciousness is active in what we are viewing, what we are looking at. And what we are looking at is an experiment of material objects, elements, molecules, compounds, atoms, chemicals, whatever it is they're studying. That is also components of source of that one consciousness. So how can one observing something affect the outcome of an experiment? It's easy. They're all of one consciousness. So this goes on. Scientists need to recognize what consciousness is. Not just separated aspects of consciousness that we call the minds of individuals, but the wholeness of consciousness. They must look at things in a multidimensional scope. Quantum scientists are beginning to look at existence in the multi-dimensions, which is great. Because it's time for us to go past the prehistoric, just terminology here, schools of thought and get into the mind of wisdom, the science of wisdom. our heart mind, our Christ mind, and understand truly how to do that. Another thing that scientists don't understand is that, yes, there all is one consciousness, but there all is components of spirits existing in every atom, in every molecule, in every chemical, in every object that they are experimenting upon. That soul, if you will, within that object or that element can be communicated with. So haven't we just gone light years ahead of science? You're not just putting material things together, chemicals, whatever it might be, and seeing what happens. Yes, they all have properties, and they do have interactions that are measurable, no doubt. But you can communicate with these. Let's say they're doing a study on magnesium. You can communicate with that of magnesium. Yes, have conversations with it, just like I'm speaking to you right now. My wife, Marina, is able to speak to crystals and have great conversations with crystals and gaining information that perhaps we didn't even know from crystals. You can do it with anything. You can communicate with anything. So now take these two concepts. One, everything is from the one source consciousness. Two, everything is also an individual component of source carrying its own spirit consciousness. And then three, what we already know, the component, individual component of that in matter. Once we understand that, once scientists are using this wisdom, then they will get closer to understanding their own heart mind, their own access to the oneness of wisdom. Wisdom is Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit is source. Source is God. God is love. Love is light. And once scientists understand the fields of consciousness and energy that surround all beings, all objects, all components of matter and beyond, and then how to generate the emotional aspect of those fields, then one can unlock the wisdom, the science of wisdom. The angels have told us numerous times, to Marina and I, the number one key is being in the state of peace. And that would go with the scientists, being in a state of peace. Not a state of worry that this might not work out, a concern that maybe they did something wrong in the experiment. Anger, their funding is going to run out if this doesn't work out, whatever. They must be in a state of peace. You must be in a state of peace. To activate the higher consciousness within you, within them, within the experiment. Our lives are experiments. And so many of us move about by rote, like a robot. We follow the path of least resistance for the most part. We do what we have to do to get by and make the monies that we need. We've learned certain things that hurt our bodies, not to do them again, hurt our hearts. We find a somewhat comfortable way to get through life. But folks, the comfortable way to get through life is keeping yourself in a state of grace and peace, and keeping the faith that you are that great consciousness, and you are that spirit component of consciousness in matter. And with that great intelligence operating within you, how could things go wrong? Because the answer is only if you will it to be. Will it to be. This is a free will world. And your worries and concerns are part of your will. They do manifest. They do create. You see? If you're in a pure state of peace, you've turned off those subtle creators, those subtle manifestors. And you're speaking to your soul. Even by saying, look, I understand that my goal is to be in a state of peace so that you may go about the mission of this being, the mission of the soul. Shamans, the scientists of an ancient time. We still have shamans to this day, but I'm referring to the shamans of ancient times. They communicated with plants. They communicated with the elements. And then they conducted their experiments based on what they were hearing within themselves. Who learned more? I don't know. Seems like the shamans came up with many remedies for ailments that worked. Seems like the shamans were able to find their heart and mind and activate it. Seems like some of the shamans were able to activate their pineal gland. Thus, activate the Akasha records, the records of all. Scientists, if you activate the Akasha records, you will have access to all the scientific experimentation and knowledge that's ever been on this planet and beyond. The angels told us that the shamans walk backwards. It means they don't follow the mainstream, what we're supposed to do, what we're supposed to know. They go within. They turn it inside out and go within, and then they get that knowledge. How much knowledge can be gained by hiking through those forests and speaking to each species of plants, asking it what it does? How is it of service to humanity? What knowledge would it like to share? Speaking to the minerals of the land, asking it the same. One weekend, one period of days of doing this, and one can learn more truth than science has learned from its conception. Let's not confuse the successes of technology with the successes of science. Technology is nothing but a band-aid for a species who has lost their way. Oh, it's wonderful. Yes, we have planes. We can be in another country anywhere in the world in the same day. But do you know that we can shimmer travel? We have that ability. In other words, bring our full being into the light particles of who we are, and be anywhere in the world at the speed of consciousness, which is almost instantly. Now, folks, if we can do that, when we can do that, we no longer need planes, cars, buses, trains, any of that. Well, you might say, well, maybe you don't need to move people, but you need to move freight and objects. In the days of the buildings of the pyramids, those monolithic stones weighing tons and tons were merely often floated to its destination. Using sound in a certain way, they were able to bypass gravity. You can float a container, a freight, to another location. That is within our possibilities. What about speaking? I'm speaking to you right now through this voice recorder, through the computer. People speak through televisions, radios, record players, tapes, 8-tracks. Well, we speak to angels through the being. Sometimes angels speak through a beam of light. Sometimes they image themselves as light and speak. Sometimes they image themselves as humans and speak. Mental telepathy has been known for a very long time. And it's very real. People speak to each other. Many people have gotten messages from their loved ones. Sometimes you just open your eyes or wake up, say, oh, so-and-so, I feel so-and-so's in trouble. And often they are. They communicate it with you. all that technology is not needed. Well, the computer also keeps information. How do we do that? Well, once we activate our pineal gland and we start activating our third and fourth strands of DNA, and then eventually our 12 strands of DNA, we are beyond that computer. And then when we have access, full access to the Akasha records, which is the big computer of the multiverse, then we have access to every piece of information that has ever been recorded. So what technology do we need? Technology to be comfortable, to be warm, to be cool when it's hot and warm when it's cold. People lived for thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of years in extreme climates. Of course, we know about Eskimos living by the Alaska and Siberia, northern Russia, in and around the North Pole. Beings live, survive, and prosper. Some of you might have heard of the Aboriginal tribes of Australia, New Guinea, New Zealand. These people walk the deserts in life-threatening temperatures, in dryness. They do it without problem. And they survive. They survive without technology. You can say that the ones who hold on to this wisdom and the ones who live this wisdom are higher beings. They're more advanced beings. We think of more advanced beings are beings that come in more advanced spaceships with technology unlike our own. Synthetic technology, we'll call it. But the real advanced beings are ones who have gone beyond synthetic technology and accessed inner technology, which these Aboriginals have done. These Aboriginals have used mental telepathy. Ones that still have access to the wisdom can be asked about you right now, and they can see you, your auric field, and know what level of consciousness you are residing at. And thus know to stay away from humans who reside at a lower consciousness, because they are dangerous. Look what they did. It is horrific what was done to these people that carry this great wisdom. It's as if, and maybe probably true, that the people that settled in these lands, mostly coming from England at the time, began a policy of taking the children of the Aboriginals They did this in many lands, even including Canada. And putting them in schools, which would be far away from their families, and treating them very poorly. In fact, in Canada, it is said that 50% of those children died in what we'll call captivity. Around those schools, there are massive graveyards of those children. In addition to that, there are the letters, the stories of those children, talking about their plight, their misery, as they are abused sexually and physically, and made to do the most menial of work, and debased, and made to feel like second and third class people of the land. Do you know, folks, the Canadian government actually apologized for these acts? Keep in mind, the truth is, many of these people were far more advanced than we are today. No, not because they couldn't build an atom bomb. If you call that advanced, I call that being behind. I call that a prehistoric man in prehistoric age. A man who believes that weaponry represents some form of advancement. That is backward thinking. Once you activate your pineal gland and become that advanced being, so what if they put you in jail? You can just disappear and appear somewhere else. Then they can no longer hurt you. Once you truly know that you are eternal light. Some of you might be saying, but they put Jesus on the cross and killed him. Surely he must have been as advanced as the Aboriginals. He was. He allowed the situation. He allowed the crucifixion to happen. In fact, he left Asia, going back to the Middle East, knowing that the crucifixion is a necessary event that must happen. And he went there purposely to let this unfold. His mother Mary, the Holy Spirit incarnated, knew this from her young age, that all this would occur. Did he, Shimmer, travel? He did. The Mormons write about it. They saw, I think it was Levi who wrote about it, maybe. I'm getting that wrong. It would be Levi's ancestors that wrote about Jesus appearing in a beam of light and then appearing as human, Jesus. It's a true story. Joseph Smith got this information, received it, It's a true story. Jesus appeared throughout the world in this way. Sometimes seen, sometimes not. Not only himself, with many people. The great speaker of our beautiful group consciousness, the angels that we speak to, by the name of Malachi, was also with him. And Malachi was married and had a family. Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene and had a family. They traveled with their families by way of light. Shimmer, traveling. Folks, the science of wisdom is to go within. In order to go within, you must keep your field, your emotional field, your mental field in a state of peace. This is the first aspect. And once you are at that level of being in a state of peace, constantly, or almost all the time, then the codes will be unlocked within you. They're already there. And the wisdom, the science of wisdom, will just arise and come to your mind. And you will become what is known as a genius. This is Kevin Peter Kelly, and once again, I'm wishing you to be in the beautiful state of peace.